Hi, Mrs. Ramirez here. We have made it to Module 2. We are working Lesson 1 of Module 2. And in Module 2, we are dividing fractions, interpreting division by fractions. So, for example 1, we have 3/4 gallons of batter is poured equally into 2 bowls. How many gallons of batter are going to be in each bowl? First of all, this kind of division, there are 2 different kinds of division. There is partitive division, and that's what this is. And when you have partitive division, you break something into parts. Okay, so mainly today what we are doing is partitive division, where we're taking something and we're breaking it into parts. In the lesson number 2, we'll do a different kind of division and we'll talk about that later. So for example, our first problem, we have this 3/4 gallon of batter and we're breaking it into 2 parts, which is our 2 bowls. So I've got, when I do division meaning statement, 3/4 broken into 2 groups. Okay, so what we're looking for is what size are the groups. That will be our answer. Okay, so when I do that, I am going to also divide it using our division sentence. So 3/4, this is our whole. This is what's being broken into groups. 3/4 broken into 2 groups. Okay, so I'm going to also look at it as a model. So when I take my 3/4, I'm also going to break it into 2 groups. And we know when we break something into 2 groups, each group will have a half. So that's actually an inverse. We have 2. If you make 2 wholes into a fraction, it is 2/1, which equals 2 wholes. But if I invert this fraction, flip it over, I therefore will have 1/2. And if I break something into 2, I have half of it. If you think about breaking a candy bar with your friend, you break it into 2 pieces, each person gets 1/2. So, going into our model, I'm going to make a rectangle. This is a really good representation. And my rectangle is 3/4. I'm going to break it in half and then break each half into 4ths. I have 3 of the 4. So I'm going to color in 3 of my 4, which is 3/4. Now, remember we said when I divide 2, it becomes 1/2. This fraction has been flipped. It's called an inverse. Therefore, I'm looking at half here. This bowl and this bowl will have some of it. And so I'm going to change my color and color in 1/2. Notice on the 3/4, coloring 3 of the 4ths, 1 of the 2. So I now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 total parts, and 3 of these parts are inside the half and inside the 3/4. This part here is part of the half, but it is not inside the 3/4. So when I have the parts that are inside the 3/4 and the 1/2, those are the parts I'm looking for. In this kind of example, they're double colored. So 3/4, there are 8 total parts. 3 of them are double colored. That means inside both fractions. Now we made the 2 into a fraction, and we said that way. So, therefore, what we did was we took 3/4 groups of 1/2 because we multiplied them together, because division is broken into 2 groups. We said, and when I break something into 2 groups, I have 1/2. So when I multiply fractions, I therefore need to multiply straight across. 3 times 1 is 3. 2 times 4 is 8. Therefore, I can see in mathematical terms as well as my model terms 3 of the double colored out of the 8. So when I take 3/4 gallons of batter and I pour it into 2 bowls, each bowl is going to have 3/8 of a gallon of batter. And in order to answer that, we need to answer our question. Each bowl has 3/8 gallon of batter. So, therefore, again, what's inside my 3/4 and inside my 1/2 when I make my model is what we're looking for. There are 3 double colored inside both fractions out of the 8. So it is a really good concrete representation to look at the model in order to do this. So I'm going to help set up example number 2 as well, and then we're going to check that you know how to do it as well. So moving up, example 2. We're going to set it up exactly the same way because it's still a partitive division problem. So example 2, I have 3/4 pan of lasagna is shared equally by 6 friends. What fraction of the pan will each friend get? Well, that's 3/4 broken into 6 groups. Okay, so if I was one of the friends, I'm not going to have all 6 groups. I'm going to end up with 1/6 of the 3/4 of the lasagna, because I'm only having one of them because I'm one of the friends. So, therefore, I'm going to set it up 3/4 broken into 6 groups, okay, which we see as our model. I'm going to make this a little bit larger because there's 6 friends. So I'm going to put my 3/4 and break it up vertically, half, then cut both in half again. I have 4 parts. All 3 are colored. Okay. Now, I have 6 groups, so I'm going to break it into 6. I'm going to actually break it into half, and then the top half is going to be broken into 3. And the bottom half, I'm also going to break into 3. And you can see it really nicely that when I break it into 6 groups, it's 6 parts. And when I color in one of them with my double color, I'm coloring in 1/6 of the 3/4. So let's check out. There are 1, 2, 3. It's doing 3 again, which is interesting. 3 double colored parts. Remember, that's inside both fractions. And there are, let's see, 6, 12, nope, 4, sorry, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24 total parts. Okay, so if I then show that I am going to multiply 3/4 of a group of 1/6, when I multiply fractions, I multiply straight across. 3 times 1 is 3. 4 times 6 gives me 24. I can see that so incredibly easily. I, as this friend, am going to have 3 of the 24 parts. Now, these 6 are not here, but that is still considered some of the parts, because if it was a whole, it would still be broken into those 6 pieces. So I still need to count these as the total parts, just not as the parts that are inside 3/4 and inside 1/6. So this I can see really, really, really easily. It's 3 parts that are inside both fractions, double shaded, out of the 24. But I noticed I haven't reduced this yet. So I'm going to divide by a giant 1 of 3. 24 is a multiple of 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 24 divided by 3 is 8. Now, so it's true, my reduced is 1/8. I can still see it in here, but it's not as easy to see from our model. So our answer, each person will get 3/24, because my model shows it really well, but I'm going to still reduce it. 1/8 of lasagna. SAGN and A. Okay, so set up example 3 before you continue on. Make sure you understand the setup and start solving it, and then we will discuss it later on in class. Happy learning!